Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new edition of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. My name is Jarrod Prugar, and I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Kevin Quigley. Kevin, it's a big week for Penn State and for former Penn State coaches and James Franklin, who is now the head coach at Virginia Tech, like many expected. But such is life, and it's a little bit of a weird breakup. It's like seeing your ex already happy with a new person, even though the wound is still fresh. But, good for James Franklin. Good for Virginia Tech. I think that's going to be a great asset to them in the ACC, which is up for grabs, it seems like, every year. But it's also okay to say, you know what? James Franklin's time here at Penn State was over. And it makes sense to say that. But it's also okay to say, hey, good for him. You did your time. It's good that he's happy.
Yeah, I think, first off, good luck to him at Virginia Tech. Living in Central Virginia, being an engineer who has a lot of engineer friends. Virginia Tech is notably an engineering school, so a lot of my friends are alumni of the university. A total 180 for that program. They were talking about earlier this season that my neighbor's a small-time donor. I don't think he's anything spectacular. He's not breaking the bank or anything. But they were talking about, $7 million in NIL. We're never going to spend at the top of the ACC. We're not going to do any of these things. Like, we're not going to be a nationally relevant program. And that's kind of how the Virginia Tech fan base has kind of settled into the NIL era of college football. Things weren't going well with Brent Pry. Justin Fuente left that program in absolute disarray. It's kind of been in disarray really since probably the last 3 or 4 years of Frank Beamer even. Going back to the Logan Thomas days, I believe, was the end of Beamer into who was the coach before Fuente. Regardless. And then now a total 180. They're spending $30 million in NIL next year, which is going to put them in the top 3 or 4 of the ACC. The fan base is absolutely electrified. There has not been hope for Virginia Tech since probably the year that they played in the Orange Bowl against Stanford, which was my junior year of high school, I do believe, sophomore, junior year of high school. Andrew Luck was still there at Stanford. So to see this and their hope and promise for that, it's awesome for them. It's awesome for that program. It's awesome for the state. It probably complicates Penn State's recruiting path a little bit, given that James Franklin has recruited Virginia so well. Now he's got investment with in-state dollars for in-state recruits. But it's good. It's good for him, and it's weird, the discourse about it, because I do think that in 10 years' time, it's year 2035, we look back on James Franklin's time at Penn State, and we can actually truly be reflective of the good that he did for the program, right? I think history will be kind to James Franklin in some aspects, and also it'll be unkind to him because of the underperforming that he had. And even then, some of the discourse around him at Virginia Tech is like, oh man, this is awesome for us. And then you get the random reports of it doesn't really matter that he doesn't win in big games because Virginia Tech hasn't been in a big game since 2014 when they beat Ohio State to start the season. So we don't really care that he can't win the games. So it's kind of a weird paradox. It's good for Virginia Tech. It's good for James Franklin. It's good for Penn State potentially to be without James Franklin. But it's still a little uncomfortable territory for if you're the Penn State football program because, like you mentioned, your ex is over there somewhere else, partying up, having a great time, and you're looking around the dance floor of who am I dancing with next? And that's a bit of a muddy water right now.
Right. It's like that SNL skit at Night at the Roxbury where they're just kind of over there shaking their heads and wondering who they're going to dance with next. And it's just like you meet. And that's kind of where they're at in the search because every coach that's worthwhile is still coaching. And that's what you want, number one. But number two, that complicates things because the NCAA and their incompetence in putting the early signing period and bumping it back to early December. These guys couldn't legislate out of a wet paper bag. The NCAA is so comically inept in the way that they handle things, and it makes things so much harder for schools in situations like this. Listen, there are a lot more dominoes that are going to fall in the coaching carousel. There's a rumor about Kalen DeBoer being very interested in the Penn State job. I think that would be a very interesting hire for Penn State if that was the case. He is obviously still employed by the University of Alabama. The University of Alabama plays in the SEC. The SEC has Florida and Arkansas and LSU available, and I think there's value in those programs. Obviously, Franklin was linked to Arkansas, but it seems like those talks went horribly astray because Arkansas has zero plan for life after this season, and NIL and everything, and that's why Arkansas is the way that they are, and why they're on the second stint with Lord and Savior Bobby Petrino. After his first one went, kind of went up in smoke, or crashing halt, if you will. But if DeBoer goes to Penn State, which is a possibility, that opens the door for Lane Kiffin to be courted by a third SEC team that's not LSU, that's not Florida, that's Alabama, where Lane Kiffin had a boatload of success as a coordinator. He doesn't have to follow Saban, which I think is a tough spot for DeBoer. And I think that would be very difficult. I mean, following a legend is absolutely maniacal, and it's not fun. The constant, comparisons are killer. And Franklin dealt with that a lot with Joe Paterno. I do believe that James Franklin is a version of Joe Paterno as far as the modern day, focus in the classroom, the whole man and the student athlete experience. But DeBoer comes to Penn State. That opens up Alabama. I would imagine Lane Kiffin will take Alabama over LSU and Florida. And then that opens up LSU probably for John Summerall and Florida for God knows who. And that's kind of where the coaching carousel is starting to speed up, because it's November 20th as we record this. Conference championships are coming up relatively soon. We're right at rivalry week to end the season for most schools. And, signing day is coming up, and so is the college football playoff and bowl season.
Yeah. Just to touch on it, early signing day being the first weekend in December, I think it makes it tough, especially anytime that you're going to have a coaching change, whether it be a coordinator position, a position coach, and especially in your head coaching position. Especially in Penn State's case, I don't know why. I feel like it's the fall from it's probably the fall from grace this year, right? You go in with the national title expectations, you fall flat on your face. James Franklin's gone, who was, by all accounts, an excellent recruiter. And you look at the programs who have had their coaches fired. Penn State's lost 17 recruits. LSU's only lost one. Florida's only lost one. What is LSU's and Florida's recruiting rankings right now? I have no idea. Penn State had a strong recruiting class. But you are going to see a lot of those guys be loyal to James Franklin. And I think you're seeing that there's a lot of churn. I think,
and they might not even, sorry to cut you off, but they might not even be loyal to James Franklin. I think these guys are chasing the bag. Kevin Brown went to WVU. That's not where James Franklin's. They're making decisions without even seeing where Franklin went. And he's still pulling some guys, but I think the bag is what they're chasing at this point.
I think Troy Hun from California, 4-star quarterback. I think he has an official visit at Virginia Tech this week. So I think you'll still see some of Penn State's recruiting class end up at Virginia Tech. It'll be interesting to see what sort of players from Penn State follow James Franklin. Obviously, some of the staff has already followed him there, leaving their post from Penn State mid-season, which is tough. But yeah, the early signing day, I get it that it's after the regular season, but anytime you're in a position like Penn State, who is having an absolute massive regime change and have failed to live up to any sort of expectations. LSU is a little weird. I think LSU is just a lot of kids in Louisiana. There's a lot of good football talent in Louisiana. LSU's really recruiting Louisiana by themselves. They've got competition from Texas and Alabama and whatnot down on those states on the Gulf, but it feels like a lot of LSU recruits are loyal to LSU. Feels like a lot of Penn State recruits were potentially loyal to, yes, the bag or James Franklin. So it's a little bit weird there, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see just how this all shakes out. And then with the college football playoff now, because you have early signing day, coaches have to remain where they are if they're going to be in the playoff, or they're in the hunt for the playoff, or they've got their conference championship game, all this stuff going on. And it's just, it kind of magnifies the issues that Penn State is going to have, I think, next season, because the transfer portal is probably going to be closed by the time they hire a coach, if they go after somebody who wants to either coach the bowl game, which I don't think you'll see, but if they're in the college football playoff, let's say it's a Brian Hartline, like, he's not leaving Ohio State before that playoff runs over. I don't think. It'd be a very bold move for him to do it just because, I don't know, that's a very loyal fan base. There would be some strong opinions there. I think I'd be a little
It's
scared.
yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Like, and you have to put those guys in a position, right? Like, and it's because you're trying to put your staff together. I mean, you saw this years ago when Lane Kiffin was the offensive coordinator and took the job with Florida Atlantic while Alabama was doing their thing in the college football playoff. So there's history there. So this has happened before, but a position coach, it's a little different. Co-offensive coordinator is a little different. So, I mean, there's just so much that can happen. And that's saying, what if it is hardline? That probably makes it a little simpler because you can just bolt a little bit easier than a head coach can. But then you've already got your guys to this point, but do you want to stick it out with them? Or are you self-conscious that he's going to be, giving details and intel from the inside and trying to recruit different guys like that? It just goes. There are just so many different layers to this. It's very much like an onion, to quote Shrek. But I mean, there's just so much more that can happen, and it's also possible that, Terry Smith is the guy too. I don't know that that's a great option. I think Terry Smith is doing an absolutely phenomenal job. Don't get me wrong. I think if all of your options fall apart and he's the best case scenario, I think he's a great person, great asset to have. I do think he should and will be with the next staff. I hope that Franklin doesn't poach him. And that's something to note. You mentioned the coaches or the staff members that have gone. None of the staff on field have gone with Franklin yet. I do expect that there are probably going to be a few that do down the line. But at the same time,
a guy like Chuck Losey's probably definitely feels like he's gone. Strength and conditioning, because he followed him from Vanderbilt, was rumored to be leaving to go back, and then he was like, "No, I'm a James Franklin guy." So I definitely, to your point, you will see a lot of staff.
And I think that'll happen for Penn State after the season, or at least you hope that it does.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, there's still lots of games left. Obviously, this is week 13, so you've got the SEC is on essentially their bye week. I mean, looking at, and we'll talk some different games here, but looking at some of the coaches that Penn State is rumored about, obviously, we'll start with the SEC. Eli Drinkwitz is a guy. Missouri's got Oklahoma. A loss there for Mizzou is problematic for them, number one. I don't think that he is a good fit or that he will be a good fit. I don't think that he's a terrible coach by any means. But, he's the James Franklin of the SEC. In my opinion. And I know I texted you that this morning or this afternoon or whatever, simply because he wins the big game. He doesn't win the big games like James did, or didn't, I guess I should say, but he beats the teams that he's supposed to beat. He's not the guy that they were willing to can and get, better. DeBoer, they got Eastern Illinois. If Alabama loses to Eastern Illinois, A, just stop the program, and B, I'm looking at ESPN right now. Tickets are as low as $9 on ESPN or on ESPN.com, which I think is funny. And then we'll go off to the Big Ten, and I think Ohio State's got Rutgers, another big noon game for them, or at least a 12 o'clock game for the Buckeyes. So I mean, I don't know that we're going to find out much more, but they have to start making decisions. I know there are rumors about Lane Kiffin being told that he needs to make a decision one way or the other about Ole Miss. Ole Miss is in a really weird spot because Ole Miss is back to being relevant in the college football again, which they really didn't have prior to Lane Kiffin, if we're going to be honest. And now, obviously, they must be sick of the song and dance, which is a good problem to have. It means you're having success that other coaches, other programs want your coach.
Yeah, and I think Ole Miss is off this week before the Egg Bowl next week, if I'm not mistaken. So they're not even on the SEC bye week. They're on an actual bye week. Where there's smoke, there's fire. I think if you're Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin went on Pat McAfee and was like, of course that's not happening. If you're Lane Kiffin, you have to say that, yes, I do not have an ultimatum because I am not shopping around for a new coaching job. That is what you have to say in the pub. Yeah. But I do think where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Like that report doesn't come out if Lane Kiffin's name's name isn't being floated for all of these jobs, for all of these possibilities. And if you're Lane Kiffin and you really want to leave, even though you've got it good at Ole Miss, and I think I talked about this earlier. Like I went down the Ole Miss football wormhole on Wikipedia a little while ago, just like looking at like history and seasons and all this random stuff. Like they're really good in the '60s, but like really have kind of been like almost like a little boy program in the SEC, right? Like not national relevant. Like they've had a tough little go, but it feels like Ole Miss has some momentum. Like, if they can build on some of the success that Lane Kiffin has, like if you win an Ole Miss, like you're a damn good coach, but so he has a massive decision to make. Is he going to leave before next Saturday? Because Ole Miss says, if you're not going to commit to us beyond this season, you're not coaching in the Egg Bowl.
Allegedly.
So
yeah, I mean, it's such a weird spot.
Can you imagine that? Like that if you're Lane Kiffin, like you have to give up your job. That's the Matt Rhule thing of like, you're not going to be shopping around on us if you're going to coach Nebraska. Then they ink him to the big deal. I don't know if Lane Kiffin's actually going for the big deal to Ole Miss or if he actually is going. But if he actually is going, he might be without a job for 2 or 3 weeks, and that's a massive risk for him. And if he's holding out for Kalen DeBoer to leave Alabama in that $80-some million buyout, whatever the hell it is at Alabama for DeBoer, I don't know. Are you Alabama? Do you want to get Kiffin back and you waive DeBoer's $80 million buyout because you want Kiffin that badly? Like, this whole thing could get messy, and it could get messy while we're all eating turkey. Like, we might need to have our phones near us Thursday and Friday because this could all go down rapidly.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's just so much that can happen. It's so crazy, and we've talked about this so many different times. If now the buyout for DeBoer is if he gets fired. If he leaves on his own, I think it's it's definitely going to be a lot different. But there's just so many different things that can happen here. It's crazy. Currently DeBoer makes 10.25 million which is third in the SEC. I would imagine he'll be in that 12 to 14, 12, maybe about that 11 to the 13 range ish for Penn State. I think, you're looking at maybe, I don't know what you paid general manager, probably about 2 to 3. So I think he's going to get a significant raise for Penn State, $2 million. And it's a lot less hassle than dealing with, people talk about the Joe Bots, but the ghost of Saban is very, very prevalent. So there's that, but it's just one of those situations where it's just so much that's going to happen now, and it all just kind of hinges off each other, right? James Franklin going to Virginia Tech didn't really cause a ripple effect. I mean, I think he was their guy. They made it very clear that he was their guy. They were very, very, welcome home, this, that, and the other thing. It's also funny that he's rumored to be potentially bringing back Ricky Ronnie and Brent Pry, which is very bizarre. I can't imagine somebody getting fired and then coming back as in a lesser role. Very, very weird. But this coaching carousel is bizarre. It has been bizarre. It's only going to get more bizarre. And it's late November. We're almost to Thanksgiving. Decisions have to be made. But at the same time, games are still being played on the field. And by people that don't know what's going on one day to the next.
Yeah, I think, the Brent Pry staying at Virginia Tech, that needs significant athletic director sign off, and that athletic director is already on hot water. So I don't think I don't think even if you're James Franklin, they gave you $9 million a year or whatever. Or the good news about that James Franklin hire is now the Penn State buyout is only $9 million in a one-time payment. So that's also another financial benefit there. But I think it'd be a really tough sell to that alumni base who's dumping $30 million in and say, you want to bring who back? Like, we literally just got rid of this guy 6 weeks ago. So a lot to be happening. Thanksgiving's coming up. So into the regular seasons here, Penn State's got to go 2-0 for the rest of the season to even get to sniff a bowl game. 2 weeks left of football, but a lot more action to come off the field.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about the Huskers coming to town with Matt Rhule, former Penn State football player and former rumored to be head coach at Penn State. When we come back for the second segment of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the second segment of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Sports Now Network. He's Kevin. I'm Jarrod. Kevin, this is a different game than what we expected when the season started. We thought Penn State would be in a much different position than what they're in. We talk about that week after week. But Nebraska was cruising, and they've had a really good season for Nebraska's sake. But they're now down Dylan Raiola, who's out, much like Penn State is without Drew Aller. And it's a completely different team than what we thought we would see, just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think we've been robbed of a legitimate game, or not that this game will not be legitimate, but a certified national headline quarterback matchup coming into the season. Dylan Raiola, I believe he's a true junior, if I'm not mistaken. True junior, feels like true junior. Anyways, true junior or Dylan Raiola, number 1 overall quarterback. Oh, sorry, he's a true sophomore. Sorry, only a second year. I don't know why I'm wishing away his college career. It feels like, but he's been in the national spotlight forever. Ohio State, Oklahoma, now Nebraska through all his recruiting. Anyways, Dylan Raiola, the Patrick Mahomes comparisons, drawing those as a true freshman. Now he's a sophomore. He's out for the year. Drew Aller, coming in preseason Heisman front runner, top 5 candidate, whatever you want to say he was. Both bona fide national level QB talents. And now all of a sudden, neither of them are playing. And you've got Ethan Grunkemeyer as a sophomore, who's battle hardened at this point in time, safe to say, given his first 3 starts, and then looked pretty good against Michigan State. And then you've got true freshman TJ Lateef on the other side for Nebraska. This will be his first really true road test. Dylan Raiola goes out against USC. If he doesn't go out against USC, I think Nebraska beats USC, and we're in a whole different conversation where Nebraska is a ranked opponent at this point in time. Unfortunately, that's not how it plays out. He was on the road at UCLA last week. UCLA has fizzled out after their little Penn State resurgence from earlier in the season. TJ Lateef has looked good, but now he's got a 7 p.m. Beaver Stadium crowd to deal with. And how does he handle that? I think you're going to get a large portion of the Nebraska running game with Emmett Johnson, who, that's what they did. That was the recipe against UCLA. I think he carried 25, 28 times, averaged 4.5, 5 yards a carry, something like that. And a lot of TJ Lateef, they made the game easy for TJ Lateef. A lot of underneath passes, screens, crossers across the middle, stuff like that. Stuff that can really test Penn State's defense, with the linebacker situation, with, sticking in the base package nickel, any sort of situation. I think Nebraska's offense could make it slightly difficult for the Penn State defense, and we'll see, can they eliminate that quick passing game? Because if not, this Nebraska team, even though Penn State's favored by 7.5 points, this Nebraska team could give them a little bit of a fit.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think the crazy thing, I pulled up the standings on ESPN.com, and I don't like to give a lot of attention to the mothership, but it's kind of wild in conference play. Obviously, Penn State finally gets that monkey off their shoulders with beating Michigan State for the prestigious land-grant trophy last week. They've given up 194 points compared to scoring 172. The main difference in that total is really that comes from it's 22 points. It comes a lot of it from the Ohio State game, right? So you look at Nebraska; they've scored 178 points. They've lost, or they've given up 175 points. So very, very interesting that they're about the same there. They are 4-3 in the conference, 7-3 overall. Obviously, they blew the doors off of Akron. They squeaked by Cincinnati by 3. They blew the doors off of Houston Christian They lost to Michigan. They beat Michigan State, beat Maryland, lost big to Minnesota in the Fighting PJ Flex. Beat Northwestern by 7, lost by 4 to USC, won by 7 UCLA. This is a very different game than we expected. This is a game that's winnable for Penn State. Obviously, they're 7.5-point favorites, which is crazy given the fact that they're 4-6 or what have you. But this is a team, Penn State, they have been on the cusp of winning games throughout the season. The only game they really didn't come close to winning was that Ohio State game, and they still had them in the first half in a position that we didn't expect them to be in. They lost by 6 to Oregon in the whiteout, which Terry Smith has called for this game to be another whiteout. I don't know the legalities of that, but I'm sure Penn State will come up with something to wear white. To blend in like the snow that is falling around the area. But, they've been in all of these games. This is a very winnable game for Penn State. They have some momentum. They remember what winning feels like against a team that pseudo has a pulse. I don't want to say that Michigan State's this great team because I don't think that they are. But they finally got that monkey off their back and have a little bit of momentum in their corner. And they're fighting hard and they're playing hard for Terry Smith. And that's the most important thing. Can they continue that momentum against Nebraska? Well, we're going to find out on Saturday night.
Yeah, and I think the other key probably for Penn State is the offense. Nebraska has been able to turn up the pressure the last couple of weeks against the two California teams. I believe they had 4 or 5 sacks against USC. They had 3 sacks against UCLA, which was 6 tackles for loss there as well. So really made Nico uncomfortable, really made Jaden Maiava really uncomfortable. I think he was only 9 of 23 passing against Nebraska 2 weeks ago. So their defensive front can get after Ethan. I think if you're Penn State, you're looking at that depth chart and you see a prolific pass rush and you look at your depth chart and you see Liam Clifford as number 2. Maybe you're a little bit concerned. But I think protecting Grunk, obviously, you have to protect the quarterback. Obviously, you have to block the run. But Nebraska's defensive line can be somewhat disruptive like they were against UCLA. UCLA was able to claw back in it, but if you watch the game, like it took a lot for Nico had to get out of the pocket, get loose, get mobile a little bit. He had a couple runs, but also just getting on the pocket and making a scramble and still being able to complete a pass with his eyes downfield. So probably not Ethan Grunkemeier's strong suit. So this is one of those games that it just could be interesting. Penn State has that winning taste back in their mouth after losing 6 in a row. I think it'll be interesting. I think the game opened as like a 9-point game, 8-point game, something like that. It's down to 7.5, but something feels off about that spread, and it's just not quite sitting right with me. Do I think Penn State can win it? Yeah, I do, but this for a game that has probably not the same expectations as we had going into the season, I think it's expectations differently this late this season because if you're Nebraska, you probably need to win this to keep your upward trend up, keep the Matt Rhule momentum going. And if you're Penn State, like you got to win this game to potentially get to a bowl game after the Rutgers game. If you can win it, beat Rutgers next weekend as well. So both teams have legitimately something to play for, which can't always be said this late this season.
Right. I mean, this is a must-win for Penn State. You have to win out, and now they're playing for a purpose. They're playing for Terry Smith. Let's be real. The support from the players has been phenomenal for Terry, and I think that speaks volumes to the respect they have as them as not only as a man, but as a coach. They could have easily wilted against Michigan State. They haven't. They're still in these games. They need to feed Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. They need to get them 50 touches, however they got to deploy those touches. If they can do that and they're in a position to do that, they're going to win this football game. Defensively, if they play like they did against Michigan State, obviously it's Michigan State. That defensive line, that was the best game of the year. Denai Sutton finally stayed true to his gap assignments and finally got to the quarterback. If those guys are able to do that, Penn State should win. And then sets up for that game in Piscataway next week for potentially one more game. You win 2, you get 1. It's buy 2, get 1 free. And Penn State's in a position where they have to continue to keep winning. That's only going to help recruiting. And maybe by then they'll actually have a head coach.
Yeah, and if you gain the momentum, maybe you can get some traction in the recruiting class. Probably not. Maybe you can get some transfer portal traction. You get to the bowl game, you win that, you get more money for the program. You can afford coaching buyouts. Getting to a bowl game will be important. There's obviously the money implications, but from a program perspective, from a player motivation perspective, all of these things matter. And, obviously, yeah, they're going to go play for their coach and Terry Smith. So it'll be interesting to see how Saturday night unfolds.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is a night game. I mean, as much as great as night games are at Beaver Stadium, West Shore home field at Beaver Stadium, it's diabolical that this game of all games is a 7:00 game. 6 weeks ago, 100% I would understand it. Penn State's 4-6, they're 7-3, but you've got all the storylines, and I think that's what makes this game even more intriguing, right? You have Matt Rhule in the Penn State aspect. He was rumored to potentially be a candidate for their head coaching position once James Franklin was fired. Obviously, he's a State College native. He played at State High, graduated from there, went to Penn State, graduated from there. He's been all over the college ranks. He pulled Terry Smith into college coaching. And now when he was at Temple, now Terry Smith is the interim head coach at Penn State, his alma mater. Terry Smith played. They missed each other, obviously, on the field. But, that's a really cool aspect to kind of look at. And it'll be interesting to see how they go about this. This is a weird homecoming for Matt Rhule. A lot of people think that he should and could still be the candidate. But, right now he's happy wearing the red and white and being in Nebraska, where 8, 9, 10 win seasons for him are pretty damn good for the Huskers, unlike what they were under Tom Osborne just years ago.
Yeah, certainly. And I guess, Nebraska, I think he still has a lot to prove at Nebraska. His wife was happy in Nebraska, so it makes sense for him to stay. But yeah, we'll see what happens after Saturday, but there is still football to play, and we'll see how that unfolds.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about everything else going on in college football when we come back for the third and final segment of the Lashing Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Lashing Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. He's Kevin. I'm Jarrod. Kevin, let's get right to our picks.
Light week this week. The SEC decided to take this week off. The Big Ten doesn't have a lot of great matchups either. So a little light on picks this week. Obviously, first game up, Nebraska at Penn State. Penn State is a 7.5 point favorite, as we mentioned earlier. I really want to will Penn State to win this game. It doesn't look like precipitation's in the forecast, 40 degrees. Both of these teams should be acclimated with the weather. That's not an issue for them. But I do think Penn State, there is life in that program, and I do think they get it done.
It's so weird to me because last week was the first time I went against the grain in Indiana. I did take Penn State last week in the Atlantic Grant Trophy game. I'm going to go Penn State again just because I think they have momentum on their side for the first time all year. They got a gutsy win against Michigan State. They're playing for Terry. And Grunkemeyer is starting to get a lot more comfortable back there. Now he's not facing, these elite teams every week. So I think it's going to be Penn State that gets the job done and sends Matt Rhule and his Nebraska Cornhuskers back to Omaha or Lincoln, I'm sorry, and see where it happens.
Next up, number 22, Mizzou travels to number 8, Oklahoma. Obviously, Oklahoma's in the playoff. Mizzou, after losses to 3 top 10 teams, gets a win versus the Bulldogs. Last week, Mizzou, they've got to win to even sniff the playoff. If you're Eli Drinkwitz and maybe you're vying for an extension or vying for a new coaching gig somewhere else, should it be Pennsylvania? Mizzou needs to win this game. The problem is it's at Oklahoma. It is a noon game, which kind of plays, it's kind of neutral what it is, but I still think it's Oklahoma in this game. Oklahoma is a 6.5-point favorite, but to me, this game might get ugly.
Yeah, I just bashed Eli Drinkwitz in the first segment by saying he was the SEC's version of James Franklin. I got to take Oklahoma.
All right. Next up, 3:30 game on CBS. Number 15 USC travels to number 7 Oregon.
Pac-12 matchup. Oh wait, this is the Big Ten.
Yeah, old Pac-12 matchup. Our boy Steve might be in attendance for that. He's a now converted Ducks fan.
He's always been a Ducks fan.
Now he's living in it because now he lives in
lives
in Eugene. So big on that. I've always known him as a Bama fan, so that's weird.
I guess that's fair. I mean, it's gone both ways. It's fair.
Anyways, I don't think USC is real at number 15. I don't really know how. I don't know how real Oregon is at number 7. I do think Oregon is more real at 7 than USC is at 15. So yeah, I'm of course gonna pick the Ducks.
Yeah, quack, quack, quack. Ducks fly together.
All right. I think we're going to go the same way all the way down the board this week. Smart strategy from you. Yeah, I can't catch you if you pick me the same games as me. Let's see. Last game that we're going to pick, Pittsburgh in their must-win game. Now that they, Pat Narduzzi said that the Notre Dame game didn't matter, wasn't a must win, so they just decided not to show up against Notre Dame and save all their good plays for Georgia Tech. I think that's what happened. Not a chance. Anyways, they traveled number 16 Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's been faltering of late. They haven't looked good. They've been struggling. Probably a lot of distractions with Brent Key going on. Haynes Keen, maybe the magic's running out there. They are ranked number 16. They are 2.5-point favorites, but I don't see a way that Pitt's licking a lot of wounds right now, and I don't see Georgia Tech losing this one.
Pat Narduzzi is the gift that keeps on giving. The fact that he outlasted James Franklin is mind-boggling to me, but I love it. I got to go with Georgia Tech. I think Pitt's saving themselves for Miami just to be that guy again. So we agreed on everyone, Kevin. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to propose to you. We pick a random game. I got Utah State and Fresno State. I know nothing about either team. I just know that it's at Valley Children's Stadium in Fresno, California. So Fresno State's the fighting David Carr, I guess, Derek too. Fighting Cars versus Utah State, the Fighting Sandy Barbers.
Is it bad that I don't even know what conference that is?
It doesn't matter what conference it is, Kevin. It's Mountain West. But
is it Mountain West?
Yeah, Fresno State is 2.5-point favorite.
And they're at home?
They're at home.
Let me see. Let's go with the Fighting Mormons. I'll go with Utah State. 10:30 p.m. games. So neither of us are going to watch it.
Yeah, there's no way I'm going to watch it because I think my beloved Boise State Broncos play at 10:30. So I'll probably be and it's a game. Penn State will clearly be playing too. So yeah, Boise State's at 4:00. Sweet. But either way,
7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. For Boise State.
It says 4. Yeah, whatever. It says 4:00 on CBS. So I'm it is what it is. But I got Fresno. We'll take Fresno State just so we can differ, and maybe we'll get one. Our luck, they'll tie.
Okay. Utah State versus Fresno State. All right. Anything else?
Any parting shots?
No, I'm good. I got to recover from all this rabies situation. So had a booster yesterday. I got 2 more left to go. This has been what a massive inconvenience. So I got to step away from the parting shots for a couple of weeks because I've gotten plenty of my own in my own arm. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's gone batshot crazy. So I think that's a good way to wrap it up, Kevin. I hope you get the best. It'll be a fun Saturday at West Shore home field at Beaver Stadium. I'll probably be there closer to game time. I am expecting to be able to cover the game in person. I do have a credential for this game, but I'm doing my first Division I basketball game on TV on NEC Front Row, St. Francis women, on Saturday afternoon. Games at 2:00. They play Army, which is a very different type of women's basketball team, since they are obviously going off to bigger and better things after their playing careers are over.
Well, congrats to you on that big career accomplishment for you. So
yeah, you get to cross the D1 off the bucket list for being color commentator. It'll be on NEC Front Row, but yeah, it'll be kind of neat.
Good luck to you.
Appreciate that, Kevin. I do wish you all the best in your rabies and tetanus and diphtheria and anything else that you might catch. You are up to date on your tetanus, right? Just in case you step on a rusty nail.
I think so.
You just get everything you need. So
with the number of rabies shots I've got, I think I'm immune against anything right now. I joke with my buddy that I had enough vaccines that I felt like I was getting my enlisted U.S. government shots. Whenever you enlist the military, they inject you with a whole vaccines. So you have no idea what they are, and that's what it felt like.
Where do you keep your chip then, if you're part of the government?
My dog stares at me a weird amount. I think she is the CIA plant in my household. So
that's fair. As somebody that's met your dog, that makes sense. Completely understand.
Mm-hmm.
For Kevin Quigley, this has been Jarrod Prugar. Please make sure you stay up to date on any of your rabies vaccines, just in case you come in contact with a bat. Ozzy Osbourne walked so bats could fly. We thank you as always for listening to the Lashing Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. We'll catch you again after the Penn State Nebraska game Saturday night.